Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Need, and as usual, we are brought to you by Coach's Corner University. As I've said on the last episodes, this is your last chance to get $50 lifetime access to our Coach's Corner University Education Collective. In about a couple of weeks, I'm going to be taking that away. It's going to be going back to a subscription model, but all the people who purchase lifetime access will maintain that. So use code podcast300, save $300 off of your lifetime access to the Education Collective, as well as discounts on all of our continuing education courses. We're also sponsored by TC Nutrition, Barefoot Shoes, and Bacon and Barbells. You can find the links to those in the description below. Today, I am joined by longtime friend, Brandon Smitley. Brandon is the owner of Thirst Gym in Terre, Haute, Indiana. He is I'm pretty sure you were a former all-time world record holder, were you not?
Yes. Yep. Twice.
Twice all-time world record holder and just an all-around amazing human being. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Good to catch up, man.
Yeah. It's been a while. I think we met in 2010, 12, I think I want to say.
Right around there, right around that Raw Unity time.
Yeah. And, back then you were fucking crushing it in the 120 class, 123?
132 is where I was competing at the most.
132, sorry. Why don't you give the listeners a bit of a background? I know people who are in the powerlifting space know who you are, but unfortunately, you're not as well known as you should be. So I'd love to hear a bit of a background story.
Yeah, so powerlifting actually wasn't what got me into lifting weights, as most people. It was bodybuilding when I was in college at Purdue. I had a good little training crew that I was with, and I say training crew kind of lightly because we just met at the rec center at the same time and always trained around the same time together and, kind of bullshitted. And they kind of saw the weights that I was lifting as I was getting ready for a show, and they realized, my weight was down to the mid 120s. And they're like, you really need to give powerlifting a shot. And I had no idea what powerlifting was. So this was probably between sophomore and junior year, somewhere around there. They're like, you need to get on T Nation and Elite FTS and just kind of read some stuff about powerlifting, but also, your health and fitness major, exercise science, you're also just going to gravitate towards the information that's there. I think you'll really like it. So that's kind of what I did. I kind of got on T Nation at first. That appealed to me a little bit more at that time because I was doing some of the bodybuilding stuff. And I started to read things by, obviously, Louis Simmons, Dave Tate, Eric Cressy, Tony Decor, Will Fleming, who I actually interned with, Mike Robertson. Many of these people I'm now lucky to call friends. At the time, they were, idols.
Yep.
And that's kind of what got me started because I was like, well, what's this conjugate stuff? What's, the bands and chains? And I literally had no idea. I was so green to it. So after my bodybuilding show was over, I dug a little bit into the weeds and kind of got into powerlifting. So I kind of learned how to squat a little bit better, bench press a little bit better, deadlift better, because I had never seen those setups and those cues before. And it was definitely a different world for me. And so I was like, well, I got to find some people I can actually learn how to do this from, because I had no idea what was going on.
So bodybuilding for you is just one and done. You do one show.
I did 2 or 3 local shows in my area. And while I had fun, I had a former pro. His name was Gary Passmore. Probably maybe some of the older people will recognize his name, but he was a bantamweight dude. And man, this guy was stacked. I mean, I looked up to this dude as a kid. He actually grew up he lived in my neighborhood and raised a kid in my parents' neighborhood.
Cool.
And so that's how I kind of knew what bodybuilding was, because he was always shredded and jacked. And, the kids' barbecue stuff, he was the dude always just eating chicken and greens, Yeah. And so he kind of gave me some free advice in terms of what to do in terms of diet, where my calories should be. But I was kind of on my own the whole time. But it was basically a one and done. I mean, I did it, and once I found powerlifting, I was like, I'm never going back to dieting like that ever again. I don't.
Yep.
The show stuff just didn't really fit well with me.
But then you started cutting crazy amounts of weight.
Yeah, but it was a 24-hour period, and then it was back, and then it was to Bob Evans or Cracker Barrel or whatever to put it all back on. So that's kind of what got me into it, and then I actually found out that Julia Ladusky now Anto was actually about an hour and a half away from Purdue. Mm-hmm. So I just got on the Q&A forums with the old school FTS Q&A forums. Hey, I want to learn how to bench press. Is there a weekend that you guys do bench press work that I can come train with you? And I got a whole bench press session in with Julia. And at the time it was mat, and they taught me how to bench press. And that's kind of where I started to get my feet really wet. And then I just found a local push pull meet in my hometown area. And, I really had no idea what I was doing. I didn't cut for that or anything. And I was still pulling conventional at the time. And I think I benched like 265 ish, and I pulled like 440, 450, somewhere around there. And that's why I was like, okay, I can be good at this. And I found a full power meet. At the time, the only meets being held in Indiana were NASA meets. So I drove to Kokomo to do an old school NASA meet, in the YMCA, tarps on the floor.
Love it.
Really old place. Kids today are really spoiled by what they have at meets.
Oh, yeah.
And I went and did this entirely by myself, no handler, did my own knee wraps. My knee wraps skills then sucked ass. And I think I squatted like 425, benched right around 3, pulled I think around 465, 475. I can't remember exactly. I totaled a little over 1,200 at 132. Is when raw was really not that popular. I was in the minority at that meet. Almost everybody was single ply. And that meet actually had given me, I think, a top 15 raw total all time at 132. And that's when I was like, I can be kind of good at this. And so
You total over 10 times body weight, didn't you?
After I did it, I just missed it at raw. I think I was like 10 pounds away off of what I weighed in at. But after that meet, I hit it every single meet until I stopped competing.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Like I got to a point where I was pretty close to opening around 1,300 in my total.
For anyone listening, totaling 10 times body weight is fucking bananas. And then to do it every single meet in your career after a certain point is wild. So that's competitively. Talk to me a little bit about the coaching side of things, because I've seen, the time that we've known each other now, we're looking back probably 15 years. You've gone from my perspective, this guy who just loved powerlifting, into probably one of the most well-read, educated, and well-practiced strength coaches that I come across. How from graduation from Purdue, where did your education take you in the coaching space?
So I actually graduated in December of 2011 at Purdue, and I was old school, again, very different, but I just walked in the strength and conditioning room and asked for an internship. Like I didn't send in a resume. I just got my butt up in the morning, walked in. I actually met Ross Bosher, was the first person
Yep,
that
I
I
know
had met.
Ross, yeah.
And he was at Purdue at the time. And he was like, Dwayne Carlisle's the guy you want to talk to. So I hunted down Dwayne. Took me a couple days to actually get him in his office, but I did and say, hey, this is what I want to, I want to learn. Ideally, I had a wrestling background. I was like, I could be with wrestling. That's awesome. But if not, throw me wherever you want to throw me. He's like, tell you what, we'll do football and wrestling. So that's what I did. And then after graduation, I then went to North Carolina A&T State. I actually had 3 internship offers. One was there, one was Portland State, one was Baylor. I think I had another small one. I can't remember what it was. I wanted to do the Baylor one.
Yeah.
I literally could not afford it. Like when I started
Yeah.
looking at housing and everything else, like I just could not afford, $1,200 a month plus the gas to get down there, no pay for anything. And I was really bummed. I was like, I just knew I couldn't afford it. But North Carolina A&T State, being at HBCU, they were like, hey, we can get you into a housing thing for like $300 a month. And it was like a 10-week thing. And I was like, less than $1,000 plus, cheap groceries, whatever. Yeah, I can swing that. Yeah. So I drove down to North Carolina A&T State, which anybody's ever been to that university, like we're talking HBCU to the core. Like I was probably the only white dude on campus that summer. Right. And those guys are built different. Like when people talk about being hungry or, being prey or predator, that room, I saw fights in the weight room. Like I saw some pretty wild shit. And I thought that did more for me as a young coach because I learned how to do a lot more with a lot less. Where when you go to like a big time program, you got all the toys and tools and everything. Like, yeah, it's easy to get kids better because you've got so much science behind you.
Yeah.
That you can just track everything all the time. Where it was a head coach, an assistant coach, a GA, and me. And that was it. And, I remember all those mornings. So that's kind of got me through that summer. I came home, found a part-time job at a gym that's about 30 minutes away. They let me train some personal training people there. So that's kind of how I got started there. Unfortunately, I was giving money back, but I was still practicing what I wanted to do. couldn't really find anything full time. And that's where like about 2 or 3 months into that, I was like, I'm just going to go back to school. I'm just going to continue my education. I'm going to try to get into Indiana State somehow in the weight room there. And I got into that master's degree program, which was a actual coaching program. So it is a science degree, but I did like it because it was more in the coaching philosophy. You still have the strength
Great.
and conditioning stuff, but to me, that's what I think is also important. It gets missed a lot in master's degrees program. It's great to have the science, but to know the psychology of coaching was very valuable. And
Yep.
again, I just walked in the strength and conditioning room, found head coach McManus, who's still there, and said, "Hey, I want to do an internship. I don't care where I'm at. You put me where you want me." And I got literally the bottom of the barrel sports, dance, cheer, women's golf, cross country, all those sports. They usually
Yep.
get no love. That's who I was with from about, I would get there at 5:30. They were lifting at 6. I was there from about 6 to 9 in the morning. And then I'd go to my classes and then I'd work a part-time job, making ends meet because I didn't qualify for a GA position. So I joined in the spring.
Right.
And then I got a GA position out of Rose Holman, which was actually like facility management, student management. So I felt like I was getting enough strength and conditioning knowledge. I knew I wanted to try to open a gym at some point. So that made a little more sense to learn how to manage people, how to run facilities, how to run events. Very good. And they actually paid more from a GA perspective than Indiana State did. So that was a win-win. And then that eventually led me to interning at Force Fitness and Performance with Will Fleming, who's one of the best weightlifting coaches in the country. He just coached Mary Theospan, who went to the Olympics. So that tells you kind of what he does. He does weightlifting full time. Not a whole lot of
Yep.
people get to do that. And Will's internship really opened my mind in terms of like the semi-private model. I was like, this is what I want to do. I get to work with athletes, but it's still kind of like a college weight room setting. It's fast paced. It's not slow. Nothing against one-on-one training, but it can get monotonous and boring, especially if you
Yeah.
expect to do it for a long time. And then during that time, while I was doing that, I was also personal training at Indiana State. So I started doing that, and they brought me on to their like staff trainer, basically. So to minimize retention of student trainer after student trainer after student trainer, they kept me and just gave me all the staff members. And so I kept those staff members for years, and a couple of them have now came over to my gym. So I'm still working with some people I worked with several years ago. And then basically that led into what's now Thirst.
When did you open Thirst?
The official day was June of 2018.
Okay. And it's huge from
It's 6,500 square feet. Yeah.
yeah, big gym. Tell me a little bit about this semi-private model, because I think one of the things that I try to do with the podcast is highlight the different ways that we as strength and conditioning coaches, personal trainers, online coaches can kind of architect a career of our choosing.
Right.
And you've done that in so many different ways. And what I'm trying to do is highlight those ways. So what's the model of Thirst? What makes it different?
So a general semi-private model that you'll see usually in like big time markets, Chicago, Louisville, New York, LA. The principle of it is to maximize what you can make in an hour, but still continue to deliver a high amount of personality and individuality to the people. So again, you're limited with one-on-one. If you only want to work 40 hours a week, that means you only got 40 personal training slots you can fill. So
Right.
on average, let's just say if everybody's coming 2 times a week, you got 20 people. That's all you can serve. Well, that kind of stinks. If you lose somebody, then you got to fill just that one spot. And to find somebody to fill that one spot is a headache. And you got to also usually you're working before work and after work. So the middle of the day is always slow. That's just a fitness industry period, but especially when it comes to personal training. So, your lifestyle as a personal trainer, yes, you can charge more money and you can make a really good living, but you may sacrifice some balance. And if you want to go on vacation, that
You don't
vacation
make
is
any
no
money.
longer paid.
Yeah.
So that part really stinks. With the semi-private model that I learned from Will Fleming, it's also what Cressy Sports Performance does. It's what they do at iFast. Is they take and mark down their pricing structure just a little bit. There's not really a golden area per se, but I would say on average, you'll see usually 65 to maybe 80% of the one-on-one rate is what you're going to charge. So
Okay.
you'll look cheaper, but now you have anywhere, again, depending upon how close you want to cut it, anywhere from 3 to 6 people per hour that you can train. And so now if you've breathed $100 to make this math easy, now you're charging 75 an hour versus 100, but you've got 5. I'm not making $100 anymore. Now I'm making in the 300s an hour. So
Right.
you're making considerably more money with the same amount of work in terms of training wise. You got to sort the programs and assessments, but generally per hour, you're going to turn over more money and more revenue, which is great for a living. But most people also just don't need one-on-one training. You're going to get those bougie people that they got to have just you, and that's
Right.
totally fine. And I get some people that ask me about that and the rates that I give them, at least in my market. They're like, no way. And I'm like, well, I can make more than that just by going and doing my normal job. So what's going to incentivize me to want to work with you one-on-one? Like, you got to really want it,
Right.
is what I kind of try to tell them. And so what we do is we basically do an assessment process with our athletes and our clients. They have to pay for that up front. We use aspects of the FMS. We use some of Bill Hartman's model with the compression expansion. We do some hip and low back tests. We measure shoulder range of motion, hip range of motion. If they do athletics, we obviously grab their vertical, we grab their broad jump,
Yep.
change direction sport, pro agility. If they're just a linear sport, usually a 10 to 20 yard sprint, we get some of those metrics so that we can at least see gait mechanics, have some performance numbers. We have a baseline, and then we create a program based off of that. And then every person that gets a program has a binder at the gym. The program is printed off in that binder. We do everything in 4-week installments, makes it easy for the billing perspective. And then that program evolves as that client evolves. But they schedule through an app on their phone, so they can go through and pick the days and times they want. Each time slot clearly has a limit based upon how many coaches are there. Currently, it's just me and my wife. So it's usually our model's 5-1. So we'll allow 5 clients or coaches or athletes per one coach. And then we just go through our day like that. And as they update their training and they're done, they turn it in. They let us know when they're in next. Whoever is responsible for that person's programming updates it for the subsequent month. And then we reteach them the exercises, progressions happen. If they've got goals in season, all that kind of stuff adjusts. So what's really nice about it is that they've got more flexibility. They pick the day and the times that they want.
Right.
We get to be able to do their training programs. Again, we've got this all kind of systemized out to where most programs take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to write, which is great. So we're not having to dump a lot of hours into programming.
Yep.
The initial one might take a little bit because of the assessment process, but
Of course.
but once that's done, we're basically good to roll, and they do all their scheduling and canceling and all that kind of stuff, and we just have to show up and train people. So we've kind of divvied some of the responsibilities to them, but they, in return, they're like, I pay a little bit less, but I have more flexibility, and I know I don't need one-on-one training because they teach me how to train. And so I feel very confident that there's some athletes I can just give them their program, and I know it's going to get done to a high standard and whatever. Now, that's not what we do, but if I really wanted to, or if they want to be out of town and go work out, then I can just say, hey, here's the workouts. If you find a gym you can work out, you can continue to do the workouts. If not, no big deal. We'll see you next week. And then we've just layered an open gym membership on top of that. And that's literally just me being a meathead, because if I would have had this gym when I was competing, I would like to think that I would have been damn near 600 pounds in my squat. But I didn't have the equipment. I didn't have the atmosphere. I didn't have the knowledge. I literally just brought those dudes into my garage gym that I just recruited off of what I saw people do in the rec. Like, I would just grab rec center kids that were lifting these my weight. Hey, you want to learn how to do that better? Come check out my garage. And next thing you know, I've got 5-6 dudes in there every Saturday and Sunday.
You kind of answered my question. I was going to say, like, is there some sort of open gym type of membership that's on top of, because I'm sure some people just don't want personal training.
Right. I think we could get away without it if we really wanted to, but that's not what I want to do. I want to give people, if you legitimately care about powerlifting or your strength or your fitness, I mean, we're basically completely outfitted by Elite FTS from head to toe and almost everything. We got some old school hammer equipment and whatnot, but I've went to lengths to make sure that you basically got like a knockoff Elite FTS in Podunk, Terre Haute, Indiana. So, you should be able to get everything you want done. And, we do upcharge for that a little bit. Our gym membership is the most expensive in our area. It's probably cheap in the bigger markets, but, $61 a month to have access to our gym, I think is a really good value, but that's $10 more than anybody else. So we do get some people like, oh, it's expensive, but guess what? You can walk into my gym right now and there's probably nobody in there, and you have 6,500 square foot entirely to yourself. You're probably not going to get that anywhere else.
One of the questions that I always ask people who are lifters first and business owners second, because as much as you are not competing anymore and you're a business guy now, at heart, you're a lifter.
Yes, 100%.
How much of a struggle is it for you to both prioritize your values and morals as a lifter for lifters with your desire to earn a living and scale your business?
It's very tough. It's very tough. There's some days where I'm just like, man, if I really just wanted to scale this down and cut the square footage in half and still do the same thing and not have lifters, I could probably do it in a heartbeat. But for me, that doesn't resonate well because I think back of all the people that I reached out to, primarily through Elite FTS. But I mean, during those days, I drove to Julia. I clearly, Louis recruited me at Westside.
Yep.
I went to Elite FTS several times. I went to NBS with David Allen. I went and trained with Matt Winning. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, there were probably several others. I went to Mike Robertson's a couple times to learn. Like all those people just gave me their time for free.
Yep.
So part of me is like, yeah, someone's got to pay to use my space. But at the end of the day, like if you grab me and ask me a question, I'm going to answer it for you. And I'm like, well, you got to book a consultation call and like, there's times and places for that.
Of
Sure.
course.
But like if you're using my space and you're genuinely trying to get better, I was in your shoe one time. Somebody took their time to help me. So why am I not going to do that back? And like, again, you play the thinking business wise, you play the long ball. You give enough kind of free help, free assistance along the way. Eventually, that earns trust, and then if they consider hiring somebody, then next thing you know, hey, I want some programming. I'm just going to contact Brandon because I know Brandon has given me some free help. He steered me in the right direction. What's going to happen if I pay for it? And then that's kind of how I look at it now.
Yeah, I look at it the same way. I look at everything that I do for free in terms of like giving help, even producing content or whatever it is. It's like it's just drops in a pond, right? And you're creating ripples, and who knows when one of those ripples is going to pass and like it'll be a big payday, or maybe just someone gives you public credit for something, and then that leads to something else, and you will never it'll never not return positivity to you when you put positivity out into the world.
Right.
And if you're always trying to make a buck off every minute of your time, it's going to be really challenging to see that positive return. And then I'm of the same mind as you. I could think like off the top of my head, probably 15, 20 people who gave me their time for free, or at least gave me a chance.
Right. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be where I am without those people. Who knows? One of those kids that you're helping in your gym might be someone who works for you in the future, or it might be someone, who achieves something amazing and they credit it to you. And I think that's so worthwhile. Um, let's shift gears a little bit to the online side of things.
Okay.
Do you currently have like an online portion of your business?
I do. So, as I'm sure you remember back in the FTS days, that's kind of when I started doing online training, and it was
Yep.
old school. There really weren't the systems that there are in place now. I was still writing stuff in Google Docs or PDFs and sending it over, communicating through email, people emailing videos. That's obviously
Yep.
kind of gone away. There's now systems in place to make that tremendously easier, which is great. And I do continue to work with people. I don't necessarily market working with powerlifters as much as I used to. It's not that I don't want to help them. I do. It's just, if I'm being honest, a lot of times they're head cases. And it's
Yeah.
really a question of how much do I want to deal with them. Now, again, there's some people that I continue to work with that are still competing, and they are amazing people, and I love working with them, and I'll work with them for eternity if I can.
Yep.
And then there's some people that literally are just in it for a 12-week meet prep, and that's it. And it's like, that's, you're not the type of person that I'm looking for. So I kind of just really stopped saying, these are the powerlifting people that I want to work with. Chances are, if you really know the way that I am as a person and you catch that off of social media or anything that I do, then you probably figure out like, hey, we would resonate well. That might be a good relationship. If not, again, no harm, no foul. I'm not worried about it. And I've kind of now shifted that online coaching space to working with people that either have former athletic ability, so they did athletics, and they just like, I just don't really know what to do anymore. I still want to train, I still want to lift weights, I don't want to compete, even if it's powerlifting, but I want my training to have some resemblance of athleticism. I don't want to think about it. I want it to be well structured and get a return on investment every single time I walk into the room. Those are kind of the people that I'm after, and I'm also starting to slowly trickle into this dad phase. Again, I'm a new dad, seven months in, and my training has overhauled. I've learned a lot of things in 7 months, and I'm like, oh, I've got the strength and conditioning science piece down all day, every day. Now, how can I take that and help the average dad that's just like, I just need to get in better shape and take care of myself so that I can do things with my kids when they're either of age or they are of age now, and I'm tired of feeling like I'm behind and I can't do the awesome stuff, go out and throw the football, run up the hill, whatever it is. those are now the people I want, because those people will really value what they get, because the memories that they make with those kids are worth well more than anything they pay to be able to get there. So that's kind of where my new focus has gone as of late.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed a bit of a shift in your content, and I was like, oh, well, this kind of makes sense because something that I see often is even in, well, we'll take my business for example. Like when I was powerlifting, I was coaching mostly powerlifters. And then as I branched into bodybuilding, well, now there are a little more bodybuilders on my roster. And now that I'm kind of in between phases and just being like a jacked almost 40-year-old, well, guess what? There's a lot of guys who are almost 40 who want to stay jacked or get jacked. And it's like, all right, like this is what I coach now. How have you gone about creating the same level of fulfillment that you get from either coaching that youth athlete or that jack dad or any number of people along the spectrum of clients that you have?
So the the big thing that I try to look at when I work with all these people is that clearly they have some kind of goal that they want to achieve. And but the question to me is, what's the underlying thing of that goal? What is your why of what you want to do, what you want to do? And for athletes, it's very simple. They want to win.
Right.
There's not really a whole lot of other reason why. Now, there can be some cases where maybe they've been injured, and so the goal is to get back, get returned to play, and then compete and win. That's a little bit of a different step, but still the underlying thing is they want to win and be better. With dads and the average person, finding that why becomes a little bit harder. You got to dig a little bit deeper. And for me as a new dad, the big thing that I think of is, I have a wrestling background. I really hope that my kid wants to wrestle. I'm not going to make them, but I'm going to try to influence that. But when my kid can actually start rolling around, do I want to be able to roll around, or I want to watch him roll around? I for sure want to be able to roll around, even if he does kick my ass by the time he's 11 or 12. That's, my why of what I want to do is I want to do those things with him, regardless
Right.
of what that takes from a strength and conditioning perspective, which is why my own training has shifted significantly. Do I miss the 500 plus pounds on my back and everything? Absolutely. I think about it probably once a week pretty consistently. But I found my why, and that's him. And so when I talk to dads or the average person just trying to maintain that athleticism, what's your why? You don't want to lose that. You want to feel that resemblance of athleticism. And while you may not have that competitive, actually competing portion, winning or beating somebody, you're competing against yourself in terms of showing up and doing the right thing for your health, because you're going to lose it at some point. Like, you're not going to be able to do the things that you're doing now. The longer you can keep it, hopefully you can keep it into your 60s and 70s. But most people have a hard time of like, what's my why? And that's what I really go after for them.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to like the desire to push. Like, I want to work with people who want to push themselves and they want to get outside their comfort zone. And maybe they've been able to do it in the past in other aspects, but the gym hasn't necessarily been a place where they've either felt competent or confident with that. And they still have that mentality of push. And for me, the fulfillment comes from the relationship that you build with that person,
Right.
because it doesn't matter. Like, I have 55-year-old moms and I have, 18-year-old world level junior powerlifters. It's that same drive, like across all those people. It's that same drive. So one of the things that we do as a company is really capitalize on like the psychographic profile of our clients and really dive into that. Because if you're only trying to coach one type of person, I think you pigeonhole yourself and miss out on a lot of really cool experiences.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about like the athletes that you're coaching now, because it seems like the athletic development is a big part of Thirst.
Yes. So, I mean, that's roughly 75% of our business, depending on time of year,
Okay.
that you would check those financials. And the main reason and driving fact for that for me was that, again, this gym is in my hometown. As a former athlete, I didn't have access to something like Thirst. I don't, strength and conditioning when in the 90s, early 2000s for youth was like almost unheard of, unless if you were in like really big markets. And so I thought, how can I take what I've learned both in the collegiate setting and the private setting, and then take that and implement it at a local level to where I can make a difference? The high school strength and conditioning, while I love my high school, it's absolutely trash. they're pinching pennies everywhere that they shouldn't be pinching pennies, and they're just getting people to fill seats just to literally check a box. And that was my big driving factor of, well, there's athletes here that could go on and do some really great stuff. They just need someone to teach them that they can go on to do that. And again, it's great to know the X's and O's, but the X's and O's aren't going to matter when you're going up against kids or schools that have 2,000 to 3,000 more students and they're playing a numbers game and they obviously have the money to hire a professional strength coach. They're obviously going to win more cases than not, regardless
Yeah.
of how skilled you are. You're going to have your random, 1-2% of kids that make it out and go on to do stuff. But that's very few and far between, where if you implement the training side, now you give yourself a better leverage and a better chance to be on that same field and compete at a higher level, and then obviously be more resilient. And we know with the long-term athletic development model, the way sports are trending now is completely ass backwards. There's way too much specialization. I have kids that literally play baseball 12 months out of the year. They're lucky if they get a week off, and that's because they went to Florida to actually go do a tournament, and they just sat on the beach 5 out of the 7 days and then played the other 2. It's just absolutely asinine to me, and to be able to try to teach these kids that, one, this is good for your body, period, regardless whether they play sports or not.
Right.
But 2, if you want to do this on a high level like you think you do, and the way that the current model is trending now, if you don't do something like what we offer, you will be very lucky to make it to college in one piece, let alone if you get to college, make it through college in one piece.
Oh, yeah, there's no
have
chance.
so many issues that the college strength coach is now going to be, how do we work around this athlete to keep them in one piece in the weight room, let alone on the ball field or what have you. Has really been my big driving force, is to get athletes healthier and learn how to train, get them obviously more explosive and improve their performance. But at the end of the day, I'm almost more of an injury risk management person than anything else. I shouldn't have phone calls with PTs and chiropractors and, orthos about stuff, but I do almost every single week have some kind of discussions with these people of how we can blend with what we're doing and actually help a rehab process. Or, if we get referrals from low back issues or shoulder issues or UCLs, like, that's not why I wanted to get into what I wanted to do. That was not the referral system that I was looking for.
Right.
But the truth of the matter, that's just the way that it is now. So now a lot of my training, as crazy as it sounds, is almost more injury preventative in nature. Yes, we still do a lot of the general exercises that you would think of in a strength conditioning facility. But in terms of how much these kids are doing, I got to make sure I don't overflow their bucket. I got to fill the right bucket. So training doesn't look like you would really want it to, just for that one reason alone.
Well, training doesn't look like you want it to. It looks like it has to look.
Yes.
I mean, obviously this is kind of the way in which your education has to flow, right? So if you get into a situation where you have this skill set and then all of a sudden you're being presented with these orthopedic cases, well, you got to figure out a way to serve these people. How have you gone about, filling the gaps in your own education or knowledge base to be able to serve this, we'll say, new generation of young athlete?
Yeah. So the biggest return on investment thing that I've gotten by far, it's probably 2.5 years ago. I joined Mike Robertson and Bill Hartman's iFastU,
Okay.
and that was probably one of the best things I ever did in terms of my education. So anyone that's familiar with Bill Hartman's I'll say new, but compression expansion model, that model was founded by Bill Hartman. There's dozens of people now that are using that, selling courses and whatever, but Bill Hartman is the OG. I mean, if you really want to know that system, he's the guy you want to learn it from. And so I was like, I'm going to the horse's mouth. So I would attend those calls, and again, you can ask questions, but they also present some material, but it also give you access to Facebook groups or whatever to present cases. And I really went down the weeds of that, and I had a hard time picking up on it. I'm not going to lie; it can be a very confusing model.
It is.
Luckily now I feel I've got a simplified version that for the most cases that I see works well. And that actually then led me on to taking Alex Effer's assessment course. And so I started using some of that to improve our assessment processes that we use. And so that combined with Mike and Bill, and then I've also went to a couple different PRI courses as well, taking all of those systems that, again, are not in any kind of general formal education. One, blew my mind, but 2, really made me rethink like how I program, why I'm choosing what I'm choosing. If I'm seeing orthopedic issues and there's clearly range of motion losses or whatever, like that compression expansion model basically answers everything if you really understand it. And so it's done a great job of, one, when we do our assessments, when we're writing that first program, we are way more direct in what we're doing. There's far less guesswork, which means you get results much faster. And basically, you're taking an amplitude and turning it up and getting everything you need to early on versus trying to just like pick and choose a couple different things and then whatever sticks you run with. That's almost gone from a programming perspective for me and my wife now. So that has been something for me that even now, I still pay attention to Mike and Bill's stuff because they don't have IFASU anymore, unfortunately. But those type of people are the people I try to pay attention to the most from the rehabilitation and orthopedic side and working with that because, again, I'm not a PT.
Right.
But the things that I do know from learning with them, I do feel rival a lot of your average PT stuff because they may give you a rotator cuff exercise, which sounds great, but if I'm working with a high performing athlete, they're probably not weak. There's probably
Yeah.
something else going on. The rotator cuff exercise ain't going to cut it for a senior baseball player. So now I have what I need at my disposal to get them one healthy, but then also perform well and hopefully get to that next level.
Yeah, the compression expansion model was a big eye opener for me as well. I mean, my first real exposure to it was working with Danny
Yeah.
and being able to like put those pieces together and look at the different layers of how much training can impact us. Like just, you know, that primary effort, it's like, okay, yeah, but what else is happening on that second layer and that
Mm-hmm.
third layer? And even down to like central nervous system or gas exchange, like it all has an effect.
Yes.
And once you start to understand those nuances, you can get really, not only really like accurate, like you were mentioning, but also even more creative in your
Oh,
application.
yes. Oh,
And
yeah.
and when it comes to keeping a young athlete interested in what they're doing, a little bit of novelty has to go a long way.
It does. Yep.
Now, you build out Thirst, amazing equipment, obviously amazing coaching. This couldn't have been like an if you build it, they will come type of situation. You open the doors. How do you fill it with people?
So the first thing I think that really helped was one, as I mentioned, I was doing personal training at Indiana State. So I had a couple clients drift over there. My wife and I were also working full time jobs at the time. So like I just we knew we wanted to open up Thirst, I just went and got a warehouse job and just slaved away. I mean, there were years, probably about 2 years, where I was working like 60 plus hours a week between that and training people, still online stuff and just banking the money to be able to go. And we, with our split hour like system, we got the morning hours and the evening hours. We basically had our job set up to where I was working in the mornings, so therefore she was coaching in the mornings, and when she was working in the evenings, I was coaching in the evenings. And we did that until we got enough people in the doors. We clearly had to do some social media marketing. I was posting a lot in terms of the value of the long-term athletic development and what that needed. And being local, people were willing to listen to what I had to say, thank goodness.
Okay.
And once we got a couple of kids, it's one of those things where you just got to get a couple of them and over deliver like a mofo. I mean,
Yeah.
that one person is worth absolutely everything in those first couple steps. And it's easy to over deliver at first because there's only 2 or 3 kids coming in. So, it's essentially one-on-one training. It's very easy to do that. And then once they start stockpiling up, then that's where that semi-private model really expanded and became way more valuable. But we also did the very small things that people don't think of. We went to try to watch as many of the games or competitions as we could. If we had extra funds, we would sponsor, their barbecues or whatever they're doing at the school, so that at least our logo was beginning to be familiar of what our logo stood for in terms of performance enhancement. And it's just one of those things where you had to, again, I work with kids. So while it's great to have the kids want to train with you, mom and dad are the ones that give you the credit card at the end of the day.
Yep.
So we also had to make sure that our marketing spoke to mom and dad, or if we're doing an assessment with mom or dad, how do I speak? With mom, I'm pushing a little bit more safety, how this is good for health, the benefits of the performance and strength and conditioning training. With dad, it's they're going to be a badass, they're going to be stronger, more explosive, more faster. And that's how you have to word stuff. They're going to get the both things, but how I talk to them is going to be a little different. How we market towards them is going to be a little different. And then we kind of realized that I'm sure you know, and this is with any strength and conditioning program at the collegiate level, football runs the show and they get all the love and everybody else pretty much gets peanuts. And
Yep.
so we realized that and we said, okay, we're gonna have a hard time getting the football kids because they'll lift some weights at school and whatever, but we're more than lifting weights. But you know what? Who doesn't get any love? Volleyball, track and field, wrestling, cross country, cheer,
Yep.
tennis, softball. Those kids get no love. And so we really started to go heavy on that marketing. Hey, we're going to go after baseball, softball, wrestling, and volleyball. And sure enough, that's primarily the kids that we get. We have more female athletes in our facility than we do males, and most people would think that's bonkers. But again, they're not shown love outside of our facility. They're not, their coaches do, but in terms of the strength and conditioning side, they're not. And then the girls feel that, hey, we actually care about the performance. We want to see you excel. We create those relationships with those females really well. And then, they start scheduling together and working out together, and their confidence goes up. And then they see that transpire into the classroom. Like that stuff just starts to snowball. And that's kind of where we've just stuck our pitchfork is if you're an Olympic sport athlete, we want you probably more than we want the football kid. And I hate to say that because I love watching football, but those kids to me from a business perspective are valuable. And I know I can give them more of what they need and don't have to worry about being conflicting with anything that might happen at the school level.
Well, for anyone who's listening, I just want to kind of highlight something. As Brandon was talking about, like how the impact of the gym influences confidence in the classroom and all that stuff. He just got like super excited and like eyes lit up. Now, to me, that highlights the value that you actually associate with the service you're providing.
Right.
And that to me is like, you can tell when someone's in this for the right reasons. And like you walk into a gym and you know exactly whether, number one, whether that person's a lifter or not, whether or not they actually love what they do or not. And number three, whether they actually love the people that they work with or not. And I think that number three is so important, especially to the longevity of the business. Because if you opened in 2018, we're sitting here at 2025, that's 7 years. Very few gyms make it to 10. And it sounds like you guys are only still growing.
Yes. Yep.
What's the plans for the future? I think the question I was going to ask was, how come you've kept it at only you and your wife? Like, why haven't you looked to grow the staff, or is that something that's to come?
So we've had some part-time staff, and the biggest hurdle for us really has just been the number of athletes, which sounds really weird, but to give you an idea, Terre, Indiana is between a rock and a hard spot financially.
Okay.
We are very centrally located to Indianapolis, Louisville, Cincinnati, Champaign, Bloomington, St. Louis. We are Chicago. I mean, we are a 3 to 4 hour drive away from absolutely all that. So
Okay.
one thing that really hurts us is that we have a lot more lower income families that live here just in general. Now there's still people with affluent wealth, but that's a much smaller percentage, and our population is only around 50 to 55,000 depending upon time of year.
Okay.
And different things influence that, but it's a pretty small community. So we're taking a big time business model and putting it in a smaller place.
Right.
And we have raised our rates pretty substantially the past couple of years because now we have the reason to be able to do it. We can
Right.
justify our value. Selling that value very early on was very tough because the average one-on-one personal training rate around us is like $35 to $45 an hour.
Oof.
Like, so that makes it really hard when I want to charge $30 for a semi-private session. So if they're coming once a week, and that's basically, I think our one time a week rate after tax and everything, they're like 128 something.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it really, really hard to compete because if we're almost playing one-on-one, why don't they go after one-on-one? And we really have to try to teeter that so closely. But with the things that usually get us there are the assessment process. When they see that, they're like, well, I'm not getting that anywhere else. So that's
Right.
already number one. I'm probably sold as a parent that much detail is being taken. And then two, programs actually printed off like in a strength and conditioning room, and they're actually written on by the kids. We have a no cell phone policy. We've got the premier equipment. We've got ample space. We have, between me and my wife, we're not knuckleheads. So, we don't do stupid things. We don't post stupid stuff on social media. Like that, I think, has garnished people to really finally trust us. And, we raised our rates again this year with absolutely zero pushback.
Good
So
for
now the
you, man.
question is, can we continue to teeter that? And then we'll probably get close. But that's probably been the biggest thing because, running a gym is not cheap.
No.
And for the amount of people that we serve, it does great. And we really have wanted to try to get that full-time employee, and we have been close a couple times, and it's just never gotten there. And so the part of the reason I've also made the shift towards the parents and the average everyday ex-athlete in terms of an online client base is that my thought process, I can serve more people. No
Right.
offense to powerlifters, but there's a billion freaking powerlifting coaches out there. They almost all do the same low level shit. And I really just don't want to deal with it. It's almost a price fight at this point. Because if you tell somebody you offer $200 a month for coaching for powerlifting, they're going to say you're expensive when they can go get somebody for 100. And it's like, I don't want to fight with that. But parents, again, going back to the why, $200 to $300 a month for training and some nutrition, they're like, I'll pay it in full. Okay, great. That's way more sustainable. So me, that was a big pivot to me is like, I'm going to go after people that one can afford my services and value my services much more. And if I can start to stack that over time, maybe that's the leverage that I get, that my full income just comes from online. And now my salary that I pull from the business now goes to another coach. And now that scaling starts to happen, and that can happen. So that's kind of where we're at. We're kind of in that like in between spot where we kind of need an assistant, but we have a hard time keeping part-time ones because we try to pay them well, but it's hard if you don't give them enough hours. It
Right.
doesn't matter what you pay them if you don't give them enough hours. So we're kind of in a hard spot there, and that's kind of what we're trying to figure out from a business perspective is how to bridge that gap.
Oh, it totally makes sense. Let's shift gears a little bit to social media because it's one area where I've seen a lot of growth on your side. Like I watch. I'm a big observer of people that I respect, and your growth on YouTube especially has been really cool to watch. As soon as I started the page for Coach's Corner University, so we're talking like I have no subscribers, I have no subscriptions. You were one of the first suggested videos.
Awesome.
And I
That's
was
good.
like, okay, that's really fucking cool. Talk to me a little bit about, your strategy with YouTube and how you're using that to kind of build your personal brand.
Yeah, so the YouTube thing really kind of started about hard in terms of what I've been trying to do about a year and a half-ish ago. Initially, I used YouTube to document my training at Elite FTS. So that kind of got me, the powerlifting realm. People started following me because I was documenting my training. I obviously let that go. That was not long-term sustainable, not really enjoyable anymore. And so I started to shift towards just doing the exercises for my gym and for my online clients. And that's really kind of where the things started to go. I was starting to film a lot of exercises. And as crazy as it sounds, people like to learn about new exercises or things they're maybe not seeing
Yep.
or how it's coached. So that's great. That's also evergreen. So it's valuable forever. It's, a split squat, how you coach a split squat, not a whole lot's going to change over the next 10, 15, 20 years of how you coach a split squat. So
Well,
the video is good for a long time.
you mentioned that earlier, and it's something that bears mentioning is like people who are unfamiliar with YouTube don't realize that unlike Instagram or TikTok, when you post something on YouTube, it's going to continue to get recommended based on search terms
Yes.
forever. It doesn't just disappear into the algorithm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what got me going. And then I had some interest of like, maybe I should do some like long form stuff. I've got a good, decent amount of knowledge base. The exercises are great, but what about programming or things for different sports or, different ways to improve your deadlift or your squat? Like I have all those things. I clearly have got a giant showroom that I can film the stuff. So I really started to go in on that in terms of what I was doing. I sort of, again, was initially just doing everything myself. And I really used that time to like just learn how to do shit. I wasn't going to pay anybody for it. Yes, it was some work on my end, but I learned about YouTube itself. And then I started to get, a little bit more followers there. And then now I'm finally at the point where I upgraded my camera. I now have somebody that does my thumbnail for my main long form content, somebody that does my editing for my long form. And that has really kind of started to catapult that. I think the last time I looked yesterday, I think I'm like almost 50 away from 5,000. So like I'm not like a massive YouTuber by any means, but that's the again, as you mentioned, the evergreen and the fact that it sticks around for a long time, but also nothing against TikTok and Instagram or whatever, but it's literally just like you post something and it's gone and you're in front of somebody and you're gone there. Where I feel that YouTube, you can actually begin to create a community
Yep.
in terms of, I mean, now you can do the polls and the posts, and that's something else that I've started to do more recently. I was try to post a poll every day, something that's training related. It can be the stupidest question you can think of, but if you get an idea of what your audience is watching and interested in
Yep.
and how they value stuff, that can kind of drive your content and what you think about, and then put your passion behind it too. Like still talk about things you're passionate about, but also find things that do well. vidIQ has been a very good low cheap resource that's given me some ideas in terms of keywords, and it lets me see other people's YouTube channels and what's going well for them. And if I'm in a similar niche, okay, they're talking about a deadlift warm up, well, I'm going to give my deadlift warm up. It's different than
Yep.
theirs, same concept, but the way that I warm up with a compression expansion model is different than probably somebody that's just doing some hamstring mobilizations or whatever. So I try to find ways to provide that value for my strength conditioning side and just let the YouTube thing kind of do itself. And I'm frustrated as some people are. There's some I'm like, man, that's a great video. This is going to do great. And it flops. And then I have a random one. I'm like, I don't know what was great about that video, but it just, now it's got 3,000 views. Like, I don't know what was special about it, but
Dude,
that's probably the biggest frustrating thing that I will say is you're kind of out of control of what the algorithm chooses to show people and not show people, no matter how much work you put in and all that title, thumbnail, description, and all that kind of stuff.
I get that shit. Like when I was going hard into YouTube, well, hard for me. I remember I did this one video. It probably took me like 3-4 hours to script it out and like record it. And I was like so proud of what I put out there. And it absolutely flopped. And then one that I filmed in the gym one evening when I was bored after doing cardio, it got like 10x the views. I was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what do you people want from me?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, give them like a master class on how to coach online, and then this 4-minute video about how your insecurities or why you can't get stronger. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
great.
And I think the other thing too about like Instagram and whatnot is that I know I'm not the only person. I've talked to Jason Brown about this a little bit as well, is that social media almost just feels like a freaking job and it sucks. Like for us that really coach, we
Yeah.
love coaching. We hate the social media thing. The only reason we do it is because we got to play the game.
Yep.
It just is what it is. It sucks. Like you said, you've got to kind of be in people's feed, even if it's not necessarily always the best content. If your face is there, your brand recognition is there, your values are there. Like you said, you're dropping those drops in there, and eventually those ripples will do something.
Yep.
You never know when they're going to do it, but if you're not putting the ripples in the water, you're not going to go anywhere. And it's incredibly frustrating as a coach, because if I could, if I really wanted to let my online stuff just go away, I probably could. But again, I'm in the serving nature, and there's people that I know can get much better quality training, or I can help them do things much faster than if they do it by themselves. And I have a passion for coaching, so that's what I want to do. But if I didn't want to do that, I certainly could get away from it. Just the social media thing is just a stick in my ass some days.
Yeah, the way that I kind of get around it, because I do get frustrated. One thing is like I don't consume social media very much. I just produce. So I'm like, I post and I don't consume. So I don't get caught in like the comparison game or whatever. But one thing that actually helps me a lot is thinking like, okay, this post got, let's say, 100 likes. How many times in my life have I sat in front of 100 people and given a message?
Right.
Probably like a handful of times. I'm like, okay, well, if I can sit in front of 100 people 7 days of the week on 7 posts and give a message that they thought valuable enough to double click and resonate with, that's pretty impactful.
Yes.
And then when you look at, okay, running an online business, how many people do I really need to have on my roster to earn the living that I want to live? It's definitely not 100 people. It's less.
Right.
So if I have, I think the last time I looked up 9,200 followers, if I can get 0.1% of those people to pay me money, I have a successful business.
Yes. Yep.
So when you think about like the number of people you actually need to pay you money from your followers, and you can just engender positivity to that small amount of people every single day, it's going to have a positive return.
Yep.
Not only that, like maybe you could speak to this, but like how much do you engage the followers that you have on the various platforms? Like, are you putting in the time to message back, reply to DMs, that sort of thing?
So I have over, when was it, the end of the summer? I actually joined Jonathan Goodsman online trainer mentorship,
Okay.
and that has taught me a lot in terms of how to pose, kind of your voice. And when I figured out I wanted to do the like go for the dad thing, I was like, I need help with this. I'll be honest, like powerlifting all day. It's what I've done for such a long time. It's like I don't have to think about it. But as a new dad, what are most dads thinking about? I can only think of what I'm thinking of, and my baby's still crying and pooping himself and can't talk to me. So, for me, spending time with him for me is somewhat easy because it's holding him, changing his diaper, doing the what seem like the little things, but to him those are massive things. So to me that's little, but I don't know how to resonate to a dad that's got a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. So I hired them to kind of help me learn how to speak, how to get some systems in place to make things a little bit smoother. And the biggest thing that I have done in terms of consuming is that anybody that gives me a follow, it doesn't matter who they are, I personally reach out to them and say, hey, thanks for the follow. How'd you find out about my content? I appreciate you having here. I hope I can provide you some kind of value.
I do
If a
the same
conversation
thing.
kicks off, great. Awesome. A lot of people leave me seen, is what it is. Wish you
Yep.
all the best. There's no harm foul. You followed me. I'll take the follow. Maybe that comes to something later. We don't know.
Yep.
But if at least thanking somebody for following me, I think at least shows, hey, I'm doing something that's above and beyond the average person that you're following, for one. But two, I am actually thankful that you gave me a follow because clearly whatever you saw was good enough for a follow. So
Absolutely.
something I did was of value to you, and I want to make sure that you know that I'm thankful for that. And
Yep.
that's really the biggest way that I consume it. I have anybody that knows me knows that I love Purdue, so I obviously interact with some of their stuff. I'm actually blown away. I think it was over the summer. Their alumni association actually gave me a follow, and they only follow like 500 people. And I
That's
was
pretty
like,
fucking cool.
and I'm like, okay, you're following Robbie Hunnamel and Glenn Robinson and your ex NBA players, and you're following Brandon Smitley, who's a formal powerlifter strength coach guy. Really weird, but okay. But so those are kind of, and obviously, if my clients post on there that I interact with them and former
Yep.
interns, people have cultivated really good relationships over the year. Yes, I want to, even though I can speak on your behalf as much as I can, a lot of times just giving you a double tap or a like or a comment or something, I know helps that algorithm, which ultimately helps you as a person, especially if you run a business. Then I'm going to do that if I feel that's legitimately genuine. I'm not just going to give you a thumbs up on everything. But
Right.
like you said, it takes half a second to hit a double like if I do see something. But as you
Yep.
mentioned, some stuff gets so buried that it doesn't matter if you post or not. It's what the algorithm chooses to let you see, unless you actually go to your followers. But that's probably the biggest way that I consume it. And I also just try to pay attention, what I'm sure you've probably heard Dave Tate talk about this before. There was like maybe a year and a half ago where the single arm lat pull down was like the fucking jam
Oh
for
yeah.
3 months. And I have no idea why that was so freaking popular. Great. Yeah, there's great biomechanic benefits and you get extra lat stimulation. Fantastic. But why was that such a big hit? I don't know. But if that's a trend, then maybe I need to post my thought process on the single arm lat pull down because clearly it's gaining traction. I can provide something else that somebody else isn't. So I pay attention in that regard. But for the most part, I'm like you. Like I kind
Yeah.
of scroll for 5 minutes and all right, I'm done. See
Yeah.
ya.
I stay away from the drama.
Yes,
I'm like
that for sure.
so insulated from the drama, especially on the powerlifting side of things, man.
Because I
Oh
unfollowed a
my
lot of that.
God.
I think I followed like 2,000 people at one point, and I've got it down to about a grand. I would like to get it down to about 800,
That's where I'm at.
but again, I just don't want to spend the time to scroll through people like.
Yeah.
Uh,
If you're not a friend that I know personally, a client or someone I want to learn from, I probably won't follow you.
yes, yeah.
Um, all right, let's get into some quick hit questions here because we're getting up on the time. What would be the message that you would put on a billboard on the side of the highway for everyone to see?
Oh man, For me as a person, for my business,
Whatever. If there was a Brandon Smitley billboard on the side of the highway, what would be on it?
my new thing recently has been the bill always comes due. So it'd be the bill always comes due.
Dude, I fucking love that. So I think I've shared this once on the podcast before, but so my dad is first generation immigrant to Canada, came over here during the Lebanese Civil War, earned everything off of his own bootstraps, and he's got this way of communicating where he kind of like pokes fun at you, but at the same time, there's a lot of wisdom behind it. And when I got home from the hospital after my injury, it'd been a 7-hour drive. I was in the back of an SUV, like laid out, and he met me at my family was waiting for me at the house to help me inside. And he goes and he's like, got your money's worth, didn't you? And I'm like, you're kind of being a prick right now, but yeah, the bill always comes due. And
Yeah, it does.
that's been on my mind for the last 6.5 months.
Yeah,
I love that. It's so true in so many aspects.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can pretty much apply it to anything.
Tell me about how you feel being a father now, because it's something that I'm very excited for in my life. And I'm always, as a new dad, how do you feel?
The first couple of weeks were rough, but I absolutely love it. I think right now, like every day that I see him do something that's the most remedial task, like right now, he's learned how to get around in the walker. And like to me, that's awesome. Like it's almost bringing tears to my eyes just talking about it. Like,
Yeah.
that as a father, that's the stuff that you want to see and you want to be a part of for as long as you can possibly be a part of it. And, I can't wait to see what that looks like at year 1, year 2, year 3. Like the thing I told my mom was like, I literally created my best friend, like with my other best friend. So
Oh,
like,
that's awesome, man.
how can you not love that? And so, now I'm surrounded by a lot of babies. My sister's got a son. There's kids. There's people at the gym that are now having kids. I have former interns that are having kids. Like that's starting to make me feel old, but I'm just like, this is the stuff that kind of comes full circle that I love. I've always wanted to be a father, to be able to do it with a person that I love, somebody that I highly respect. Uh, and I know that one, he's going to be in great hands with me and her, no matter whatever happens.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that stuff now and just like going to the gym with him and watching him just see all the other kids do all this stuff. And like, I'm like, that's going to be you one day, before you know it. But like to give life to somebody that, again, like they're just going to be your best friend. There's no better feeling.
Dude, I love that. The last question I have for you, if there's one person that you would like to see me interview on the podcast, who would it be? The caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Um, I mean, I'm a big Mike Robertson fan, so I would say Mike Robertson.
Dude, I would love to talk to Mike Robertson.
I will say that going to IFAST and learning from them was great, but now I'm at the point where I have a relationship with Mike where if I got a question, I can text him. He was in Terre Haute for a soccer match for his daughter, and he came by the gym to hang out and say hi and
Oh, that's
see
cool.
the wife and whatnot. And then I've been up in India before, and he just let me drop in the gym to hang out. He was training Dakota Mathias, who played basketball at Purdue, who's now in the pros. Let me hang out with Dakota Mathias for 30 minutes. Like, stuff like that seems so little, but when you go from a professional relationship to now being a personal relationship, that to me means much more. And I feel like I now have a mentor that actually is a friend and I can always rely on. And then clearly what he's done has completely transformed how I am as a coach and run my business. And like,
Right.
no matter how much my business continues to excel, I'll know that it's gotten there at some point because of Mike and Bill, but more so Mike, because Mike I resonate with, because I'm not a physical therapist, and me and Mike are kind of on the same wavelengths of how we train people, how we program, how we think about sports performance. So that has been super beneficial, and yeah, that's why I would say shout out to Mike.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit you up for that after.
Okay,
Brandon, thank you so much for joining me. I'll have links to where we can find you in the show notes. But I really appreciate your time, and it's been awesome to catch up with you and seeing you do great things, man.
absolutely, Paul. I appreciate having me, man.
Thanks, man. And everyone, thank you so much for joining. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And we'll catch you on the next one.